I'm a single dad. Not the kind you see in movies, where everything magically works out and life feels easy. No, my life is a constant balancing act. Bills, work, school lunches, bedtime stories, and trying to be both a father and a mother to the one person who means everything to me, my daughter, Emma. Emma is 7 years old. She has these bright, curious eyes and a laugh that can fill an entire room. Honestly, she's the only reason I keep pushing forward every single day. But raising a child alone? It's not easy. Some days I feel like I'm barely holding everything together. My name is Daniel, and during the day, I work as a mid-level analyst at Carter Financial Group, one of the fastest-growing investment companies in the city. The company is run by Olivia Carter, our CEO. Olivia Carter isn't just successful, she's legendary in the business world. People talk about her like she's some kind of unstoppable force. At 32, she built a company worth hundreds of millions of dollars. In the office, she's known for being sharp, focused, and almost intimidating. Most employees are too nervous to even make eye contact with her in the hallway. But the strange thing is, whenever she walks past my desk, I sometimes notice something different in her expression. For just a split second, she doesn't look like a powerful CEO. She looks lonely. Still, she's my boss. And I'm just another employee in a building full of people trying to survive the corporate grind. Our worlds were never supposed to cross. At least, that's what I thought. Until the night everything started to change. It all began with a terrible date. One Friday evening after work, one of my coworkers practically forced me to go on a blind date. "Daniel, you need to get back out there," he kept insisting. I tried to laugh it off. "Man, I have a daughter and a full-time job. I barely have time to sleep." But he wouldn't take no for an answer. "Just one dinner," he said. "What's the worst that could happen?" Turns out, a lot. The restaurant was nice. Too nice, actually. Dim lights, expensive wine, quiet music playing in the background. The woman I met was attractive, confident, and dressed like she had just stepped out of a fashion magazine. At first, everything seemed fine. We talked about work, hobbies, and life. But after about 15 minutes, the questions started changing. "So, what kind of car do you drive?" she asked. I shrugged. "A used Honda." She gave a polite smile. "And your salary range?" I nearly choked on my water. Then came the question that always changes everything. "So, do you have kids?" I nodded. "Yeah. A daughter. Her name is Emma." The atmosphere at the table changed instantly. Her smile faded just a little. "Oh," she said. Just one word, but it said everything. A few minutes later, she leaned back in her chair and crossed her arms. "I'm going to be honest," she said. "I don't usually date men with kids." I didn't argue. I didn't try to convince her. I simply nodded and smiled politely. "That's fair." I paid the bill, thanked her for her time, and walked out of the restaurant into the cool night air. Somewhere in the distance, traffic hummed and neon lights flickered across the city streets. And for a moment, I just stood there. Not angry. Not even surprised. Just tired. Dating as a single parent isn't just complicated. Sometimes it feels impossible. When I got home, the apartment was quiet. Emma was already asleep in her room. I walked in slowly and checked on her. She was curled up under her blanket, hugging the stuffed bunny she's had since she was 3. Her breathing was soft and peaceful. I gently pulled the blanket up over her shoulder. And in that moment, I reminded myself of something important. She's the reason I keep going. She's my whole world. After that, I went to the living room and sat down on the couch. The glow from my laptop lit up the room while unpaid bills and work documents stared back at me from the coffee table. Sometimes life feels like an endless list of responsibilities. Work harder. Provide more. Be stronger. Never fall apart. Especially when someone else depends on you. I leaned back and rubbed my eyes. Maybe relationships just weren't meant for someone like me anymore. Maybe my life was supposed to stay exactly like this. Just me. And Emma. But what I didn't know at that moment was that life had already started writing a completely different story for me. And that story involved someone I never expected. My boss. Olivia Carter. Because only a few hours later, at exactly 4:03 in the morning, my doorbell was going to ring. And the person standing on the other side of that door was going to change my life forever. But before we continue this story, I want to hear from you. If you enjoy emotional stories like this one, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next chapter. Also hit the like button because it really helps the channel grow and allows us to bring you more stories like this. And I'm curious. Which country are you watching from? Drop a comment below and let me know where in the world you're listening to this story. I love seeing how many different places these stories reach. Now, take a deep breath. Because the next chapter begins at 4 a.m. when a powerful CEO showed up at a single father's door. And what she said next would change both of their lives forever. The next morning, life felt normal. At least on the surface. The alarm clock rang at 6:30 a.m., just like it always did. I got up, made breakfast, packed Emma's lunch, and walked her to the bus stop at the end of our street. She waved at me through the bus window with that bright, innocent smile that could melt away almost any bad mood. "Bye, Dad. Don't work too hard." I smiled and waved back. No promises. When the bus pulled away, I stood there for a moment longer than usual. Something about the night before kept replaying in my head. The awkward date. The long walk home. The quiet apartment. But eventually, reality kicked in. Work wasn't going to wait. By 8:15 a.m., I was already sitting at my desk inside Carter Financial Group's glass-covered office building in downtown Chicago. The office buzzed with its usual energy. Phones ringing. Keyboards clicking. People rushing from meeting to meeting with coffee cups in their hands. It was the kind of place where everyone looked busy, and everyone secretly worried about falling behind. I opened my laptop and began reviewing the weekly financial reports. Numbers, charts, projections, the usual stuff that made up my daily routine. To be honest, I liked my job. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. And stability matters a lot when you're raising a child alone. About 30 minutes into my work, I heard the quiet sound of heels approaching across the office floor. Normally I wouldn't have paid attention. But something about the sudden silence around me made me look up. People at nearby desks had stopped talking. Some even straightened their posture. That only meant one thing. Olivia Carter was walking through the office. She moved confidently, her dark blazer perfectly tailored, her posture straight, her expression calm but focused. Even after working here for 3 years, it was hard not to notice her presence. She had that kind of energy, the type that filled a room without trying. Most employees avoided eye contact when she walked by. But as she passed my desk, something unexpected happened. She stopped. I looked up, surprised. "Good morning, Daniel," she said. For a moment, I wondered if she had mistaken me for someone else. "Good morning, Miss Carter," I replied. Her eyes studied my face for a second. "You look tired." I laughed quietly. "That obvious?" She folded her arms lightly. "Very." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she tilted her head slightly. "Late night?" I hesitated. Talking about personal life with the CEO wasn't exactly standard workplace behavior. But something about the way she asked felt genuine. Just a bad date, I admitted. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. A bad date? I nodded. Blind date. My coworker set it up. Olivia leaned casually against the edge of my desk, clearly interested now. And? I shrugged. Let's just say it didn't go well. For a moment, she looked almost amused. What happened? I hesitated again, but eventually I told her. About the restaurant. About the questions. About the moment the woman found out I had a daughter. And the polite rejection that followed. When I finished speaking, Olivia was quiet for a few seconds. Then she said something that surprised me. Sounds like she made the wrong decision. I blinked. Excuse me. She gave a small shrug. Any man who works full-time and still manages to raise a child alone deserves respect. Her voice wasn't dramatic. It was simple. Honest. And somehow, it meant more than she probably realized. Well, I said with a small smile, dating gets complicated when kids are involved. Olivia studied me carefully. But Emma is worth it, right? The fact that she remembered my daughter's name caught me off guard. Always, I said. For just a moment, something soft passed through her expression. Then she straightened up. Well, Daniel, try to get some rest tonight. And just like that, she walked away toward the elevators. The office slowly returned to normal. But a few coworkers nearby were already looking at me with raised eyebrows. One of them leaned over the divider. Dude, he whispered. What was that? What was what? The CEO just stood at your desk for like 3 minutes. I shrugged. Just talking. About what? Life. He shook his head. Man, you're either incredibly lucky or incredibly doomed. I laughed and went back to work. But something about the conversation stayed with me. Not because she was the CEO. But because of the way she listened. Over the next few days, I started noticing small things. Subtle things. Things I might have ignored before. One afternoon, while I was reviewing spreadsheets, someone quietly placed a coffee cup on my desk. I looked up. It was Olivia. Thought you might need this, she said. Before I could even respond, she had already continued walking down the hallway. Another day, she stopped by again. How did Emma's school play go? She asked. I smiled immediately. You remembered? Of course. She was amazing, I said proudly. She played a sunflower. Olivia actually laughed. A sunflower? Very important role. I'm sure it was. Moments like that became more frequent. Never long. Never inappropriate. Just small conversations. Small gestures. But people started noticing. Office gossip spreads fast in any company. Especially when it involves the CEO. One afternoon in the break room, 2 coworkers were whispering while glancing in my direction. I'm telling you, one of them said. She treats him differently. Maybe he's secretly a genius analyst. Or maybe she just likes him. I rolled my eyes and grabbed my coffee. People love making stories out of nothing. Still. Even I had to admit something had changed. Not dramatically. Just enough to feel noticeable. But the truth was, I didn't think much about it. My focus was still the same as always. Work hard. Take care of Emma. Keep life simple. Unfortunately, life rarely stays simple for long. Because while things looked calm on the surface, something very serious was happening behind the scenes. Something big. Something dangerous. And the first sign appeared one evening as I was finishing a late report at the office. Most employees had already gone home. The lights in the building were dimmer now, casting long shadows across the empty desks. As I walked past the conference room, I noticed the door was slightly open. Inside, Olivia was on the phone. Her voice was quiet, but tense. If the investors pull out now, the entire deal collapses. I froze for a moment. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. But the stress in her voice was impossible to ignore. "We can't let the company fail," she continued. "Thousands of employees depend on this." There was a pause. Then she spoke again, softer this time. "I'll find another solution." I quickly moved away before she noticed me. But the conversation stayed in my mind. For the first time since I had met her, Olivia Carter didn't sound like a powerful CEO. She sounded worried. Very worried. And that feeling of unease followed me all the way home that night. I didn't realize it yet. But the quiet tension building behind those office walls was about to explode. And somehow, I was about to become part of the solution. But I had no idea how. All I knew was this. In just a few hours, my doorbell was going to ring at 4 in the morning. And the person standing outside was going to ask me something that would change both of our lives forever. That night, something didn't feel right. I couldn't fully explain it, but the conversation I overheard in the office kept replaying in my mind. Olivia's voice, the tension in it, the way she said the investors might pull out. I had worked at Carter Financial Group long enough to understand what that meant. When investors lose confidence, things can collapse fast. Faster than most employees ever realize. Still, I told myself it wasn't my place to worry about it. I was just an analyst. Decisions like that happened far above my pay grade. So I pushed the thought aside and focused on what mattered most, getting home to Emma. When I opened the apartment door that evening, I was greeted by the smell of grilled cheese sandwiches. Emma stood on a chair in the kitchen, proudly flipping one in the pan. "Dad! You're just in time." I laughed. "Whoa, whoa. Chef Emma in action." She grinned. "I'm practicing. Mrs. Thompson says cooking is an important life skill." "Well," I said, setting my bag down, "Mrs. Thompson sounds very wise." We ate dinner together at the small kitchen table, talking about her school day, her friends, and the sunflower costume she wanted to keep forever. Moments like that always reminded me why I worked so hard. No matter what happened at the office. This right here was my real life. Later that night, after Emma went to bed, I sat in the living room reviewing a few reports on my laptop. The numbers were strange. Not terrible. But definitely, unusual. Several large accounts had been moved around recently. Investments were shifting. Some funds had been redirected into short-term holdings. To someone outside the finance world, it might have looked normal. But to someone who studied numbers every day, it looked like a company preparing for turbulence. I leaned back in my chair. Something big was definitely happening behind the scenes. The next morning confirmed it. When I walked into the office, the atmosphere was completely different. Usually, mornings at Carter Financial were energetic but relaxed. Today felt tense. People were whispering in small groups. Phones rang more often. Several senior executives rushed down the hallway toward the main conference room. Then an email notification appeared on my screen. Emergency board meeting, 9 a.m. Everyone knew what that meant. Something serious was happening. By 9 o'clock, the executive floor was sealed off for the meeting. Most of us stayed at our desks pretending to work, but the truth was, nobody could focus. Rumors spread quickly. "Did you hear the European investors are backing out?" "No, I heard the tech acquisition deal collapsed." "Someone said the company might lose half its funding." Nobody knew the truth. But everyone felt the pressure. Nearly 2 hours later, the conference room doors finally opened. Board members walked out looking frustrated. Some were shaking their heads. One investor stormed past the reception desk without saying a word. And then Olivia stepped out last. She looked calm. But I could tell something was wrong. Her posture was still confident, but her eyes looked tired. Like someone carrying a weight nobody else could see. She walked past the office floor without speaking to anyone and disappeared into her private office. The rest of the day passed slowly. Work continued, but the energy of the office had changed. People were distracted. Worried. Around 6 in the evening, most employees packed up and went home. But I stayed behind to finish analyzing a report. As the hours passed, the office grew quiet. The cleaning staff moved through the hallways. The lights dimmed. By 8:30 p.m., only a few desks still had their lamps on. I saved my work and stood up to stretch. That's when I heard something unusual. Voices. Coming from the executive hallway. I wasn't trying to listen, but the door to the smaller meeting room was slightly open. And Olivia was inside. She was speaking with someone on the phone. Her voice sounded different tonight. Less controlled. More emotional. If this deal fails, she said quietly, the company won't survive the year. I froze. She continued speaking. I've already cut operational costs. I've reorganized the investments. But the board wants something more. There was a pause. Then she said something that surprised me. They think the company's public image is the problem. Another pause. Yes. I understand. Her voice grew softer. I'll figure something out. I quickly stepped away before she noticed I was nearby. But my heart was racing. A failing deal. Board pressure. Investors losing confidence. It suddenly made sense why the office felt like it was holding its breath. The company wasn't just facing a challenge. It was facing a crisis. And if the company failed, thousands of employees could lose their jobs. Including me. Including the paycheck that supported Emma. I grabbed my jacket and headed home. That night, I barely slept. Not because I was panicking. But because something about Olivia's voice stayed in my mind. She had sounded alone. Like someone fighting a battle with no backup. Morning eventually came. But before the sun fully rose, something unexpected happened. At exactly 4:03 a.m. the doorbell rang. At first, I thought I was dreaming. Nobody rings a doorbell at 4 in the morning unless something is seriously wrong. I glanced toward Emma's bedroom door. Still closed. Still quiet. The bell rang again. My heart started beating faster. I walked toward the front door slowly, trying not to wake my daughter. Through the peephole, I could barely see a silhouette standing under the hallway light. A tall figure. Wearing a coat. I opened the door. And immediately froze. Standing there, with raindrops clinging to her coat and strands of wet hair framing her face, was Olivia Carter. My boss. The CEO of a billion-dollar company. At 4 in the morning. Outside my apartment. For a moment, neither of us spoke. She looked exhausted. Not the polished CEO I saw in the office every day. But a woman who had clearly been awake all night, searching for answers. Daniel, she said softly. I'm sorry for showing up like this. I stared at her, still trying to process the situation. Ms. Carter. She took a slow breath. I didn't know where else to go. The hallway was silent except for the distant sound of rain tapping against the windows. I stepped aside and opened the door wider. You should come in. She hesitated for a moment. Then stepped inside. And I had a feeling that whatever she was about to say next was going to change everything. Standing in my apartment at 4 in the morning, Olivia Carter didn't look like the powerful CEO everyone feared in the office. She looked exhausted. Her hair was slightly damp from the rain outside, and the confident composure she always carried at work seemed to have faded. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The apartment was quiet except for the faint ticking of the wall clock and the soft hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. I glanced toward Emma's bedroom door. Still closed. Still peaceful. Good. She didn't need to wake up in the middle of whatever this was. "Please," I said quietly, stepping aside. "You should come in." Olivia nodded and walked inside slowly, taking off her coat near the door. Even in the dim lighting of the apartment, I could see the tension in her shoulders. I led her into the kitchen and turned on the soft overhead light. "Coffee?" I asked. She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "That would be nice." While the coffee machine started brewing, we sat across from each other at the small kitchen table. The situation felt surreal. A billionaire CEO sitting in my modest apartment at 4 in the morning. If someone had told me this would happen 24 hours ago, I would have laughed. But now, here we were. Olivia wrapped her hands around the warm mug I placed in front of her. For a moment, she didn't drink it. She just stared down at the rising steam. "Daniel," she finally said softly. "I know this must seem strange." I gave a small smile. Strange is one way to describe it. For the first time that night, she let out a quiet breath that almost sounded like a laugh. Then her expression turned serious again. "I'm in trouble." The words were simple. But the way she said them carried weight. "What kind of trouble?" I asked. She leaned back slightly in the chair, clearly gathering her thoughts. "The company is collapsing." The statement hit me harder than I expected. I had suspected something was wrong, but hearing it said out loud made it real. "What happened?" I asked. Olivia looked down at the table. 3 months ago, we started negotiating a major investment deal with a group of international investors. I nodded slowly. Deals like that could change the future of an entire company. It was supposed to secure funding for our next 5 years of expansion, she continued. But last week, everything started falling apart. She finally took a sip of coffee. The investors lost confidence. "Why?" I asked. Olivia hesitated. Then she gave a small, bitter smile. "Because of me." I frowned slightly. "I don't understand." "The board thinks the company's public image is the problem," she explained. "They believe investors see me as too cold, too distant, too focused on business." She leaned forward slightly. "They think the company lacks a human story." I blinked. "A human story?" She nodded. "The investors want something that makes the company feel more relatable to the public." Her fingers tightened around the mug. "They believe people trust leaders who feel human." For a moment, the room fell silent. Then she said something that surprised me. "They suggested I get married." I almost laughed, but quickly realized she wasn't joking. "You're serious?" "Yes." She looked directly at me. "The board believes a stable family image would completely change the company's public perception." I leaned back in my chair, trying to process the situation. "So they want you to, what? Find someone and get married for publicity?" Olivia sighed. "Essentially. That sounds insane." "It is." She rubbed her temples slightly. "But if I don't fix the situation soon, the investors will withdraw their support. And if that happens, the company could collapse." The weight of those words hung in the air. Thousands of employees. Careers. Families depending on those salaries. Everything at risk. And suddenly, I understood why she looked so exhausted. She had been carrying all of this alone. But the next thing she said caught me completely off guard. "That's why I came to see you." I blinked in confusion. "Me?" Olivia nodded slowly. Yes. Why me? She hesitated for a moment. Then she spoke honestly. Because you're exactly the kind of person the investors want to see. I stared at her. I'm an analyst. You're a single father. Her voice was calm, but direct. You work hard. You take care of your daughter. You represent stability. She paused. And you're someone I trust. The room fell silent again. Then she said the sentence that completely changed everything. Daniel, would you consider marrying me? My brain stopped for a second. I'm sorry, what? It wouldn't be a real marriage, she explained quickly. It would be a public arrangement. For the company? Yes. She met my eyes. 6 months. That's all. Just long enough to stabilize investor confidence. I stared at her in disbelief. You want a fake marriage? She nodded slowly. It would remain professional. There would be legal agreements. No personal obligations. She paused. But it could save the company. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. I could feel my heart beating faster. This was insane. Completely insane. But Olivia wasn't smiling. She wasn't joking. She looked like someone standing at the edge of a cliff. Waiting to see if anyone would reach out a hand. I know this is an unreasonable request, she said quietly. And you have every right to say no. Her voice softened. But I didn't know who else to ask. I looked down at the kitchen table. My mind raced through 100 different thoughts. My job. My daughter. The media attention. The complications. And then something else. The memory of Olivia's voice in the office the night before. The way she sounded when she thought nobody was listening. Alone. Overwhelmed. Desperate. I looked back up at her. For the first time since she arrived, I realized something important. Olivia Carter wasn't here as a CEO tonight. She was here as a person who had run out of options. And that realization made the decision even harder. Because saying yes could change my life completely. But saying no might destroy hers. And somewhere down the hallway, my daughter slept peacefully, completely unaware that one decision made in this tiny kitchen was about to change our future forever. For a long moment, the kitchen was completely silent. Olivia Carter sat across from me at the small table, her hands wrapped around a mug of coffee that had long since stopped steaming. And I sat there trying to process what she had just asked. A fake marriage. 6 months. A public arrangement designed to save $1 billion company. If someone had told me a week ago that my life would lead to this moment, I would have laughed in their face. But now, it didn't feel like a joke. It felt like a crossroads. I looked toward the hallway where Emma's room was. Behind that door, my 7-year-old daughter was sleeping peacefully. She trusted me to make the right decisions. To keep our life safe and stable. And suddenly, I realized something. This decision wasn't just about me. It was about her too. I turned back toward Olivia. She looked calmer than before, but I could still see the uncertainty in her eyes. For someone who controlled million-dollar deals every day, asking this question clearly wasn't easy. I don't expect an answer right now, she said quietly. You can take time to think about it. I leaned back slightly in my chair. I already am thinking about it. A faint smile appeared on her face. That's fair. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I asked the obvious question. Why me? She looked genuinely surprised. I told you already. You're responsible. You're trustworthy. You're a father. That's exactly the image the company needs. I shook my head slowly. That can't be the only reason. Olivia studied me for a second. Then she sighed. You want the honest answer? Yes. She looked down at the table before speaking again. I've watched you for a while. That caught me off guard. Watched me? Not in a strange way, she added quickly. But I pay attention to the people who work for me. You always arrive early. You never leave before finishing your work. And every time Emma has something important, you make sure you're there for her. She met my eyes again. That kind of commitment says a lot about someone's character. I didn't know what to say. Nobody had ever described my life like that before. To me, it was just survival. But to Olivia, it meant something more. You're the kind of person people believe in, she continued. And right now, belief is exactly what my company needs. Her words hung in the air. I rubbed my hands together slowly. So if we did this, what happens? We would make a public announcement, she explained. The story would be simple. Successful CEO meets hardworking single father. They fall in love. Start building a family. I raised an eyebrow. That sounds like a movie. She laughed quietly. Yes. It does. But people love stories like that. And investors trust companies that feel stable. I exhaled slowly. The idea still felt surreal. But at the same time, I couldn't ignore the reality. If the company collapsed, thousands of employees would lose their jobs. Families would suffer. And my own financial stability would disappear along with it. Still, something about the arrangement bothered me. Emma hates lies, I said quietly. Olivia tilted her head. What do you mean? She's 7, I said. But she understands honesty. If I suddenly tell her I'm married to someone, she'll believe it. And if she finds out it's fake? I shook my head. That would hurt her. Olivia didn't interrupt. She simply listened. Finally she spoke. I never thought about it that way. That's because you don't have kids, I replied gently. For a moment, she looked thoughtful. Then she nodded slowly. You're right. Silence returned to the kitchen. Then I said something that surprised both of us. I'll do it. Olivia blinked. You will? Yes. Relief immediately filled her expression. But before she could celebrate, I raised one finger. On one condition. She leaned forward slightly. What condition? This can't be a fake marriage. She froze. I'm sorry, what? If we're doing this, I said calmly, we do it honestly. No pretending. No acting. No lies for Emma. Olivia looked confused. You're saying? I'm saying we try. Actually try. Her eyes widened slightly. You mean a real relationship? Why not? I shrugged lightly. You're clearly not a terrible person. She laughed softly at that. High praise. And Emma deserves someone in her life who's actually there. The room was quiet again. But this time, the silence felt different. Lighter. More hopeful. Olivia studied my face carefully. You realize this would make everything much more complicated. I know. And what if it doesn't work? Then it doesn't work. But at least we didn't lie. She leaned back in her chair, clearly processing the idea. Finally, she smiled. Not the polished smile she used for investors or media interviews. A real one. You know something, Daniel? What? This might be the most reckless decision I've ever made. I laughed. Same here. But somehow, it felt right. Over the next few weeks, everything moved quickly. Lawyers drafted agreements. The board approved the plan. And then the public announcement happened. News outlets loved the story. Billionaire CEO finds love with single father. Powerful businesswoman builds family with everyday hero. The story spread across social media and financial news channels. And just like Olivia predicted, investor confidence returned almost immediately. The deal went through. Funding was secured. The company stabilized. But the biggest change didn't happen in the boardroom. It happened at home. Emma was shy around Olivia at first. But Olivia surprised me. She didn't try to impress my daughter with expensive gifts. Instead, she did simple things. Helping with homework. Reading bedtime stories. Listening. Really listening. One evening during dinner, Emma looked up from her plate. "Dad?" "Yeah, kiddo." She pointed her fork toward Olivia. "Is she staying with us forever?" Olivia looked slightly nervous. I smiled. "That depends." Emma looked thoughtful for a moment. Then she shrugged. "I think she should." Olivia blinked. "Why?" Emma grinned. "Because you make Dad smile more." For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Olivia laughed softly, wiping a small tear from her eye. 6 months later. The company was stronger than ever. Record profits. Stable investors. Global expansion. But the biggest surprise wasn't in the business world. It was in our living room one quiet Sunday afternoon. Emma was drawing pictures on the floor while Olivia and I sat on the couch. Suddenly Emma looked up. "Hey Olivia." "Yes." Emma tilted her head. "Can you be my real mom someday?" The room went completely silent. Olivia looked at me. I looked at her. And for the first time since this crazy story began, the answer felt simple. She smiled warmly at Emma. "I would love that." And sometimes, the most unexpected doorbell at 4 in the morning turns out to be the moment that changes everything. Forever.